but it's funny. It's funny anyway.
Yeah.
I've been trying to make a video all morning. And I don't know why. I don't know why I'm compelled to do it. So I brought Bill in here to see if there's any kind of weird shit we can talk about.
Give it a few minutes and it will happen, maybe even sooner than that. So, I don't know. You said you wanted to talk about Slovenia? Or...
Well, we could talk about Slovenia, or we could just talk about that video we just watched with that dipshit woman in it.
Oh, so there was a video of, she looked like maybe a TikTok person. It was on TikTok. She looked like maybe she was obviously a 20-something, maybe 22, 23, and did not understand as she looked at the camera as to what somebody with a corporate job did for 8 hours a day.
Okay.
And that they still went on.
Well, it was on Tom Powell Jr.
Right, it was on somebody else's channel.
And he said, I'm kind of speechless about this. And she was just like, what do you do when you go in every day and you're tippy tapping on your computer and sitting in your cubicle? And I was just like, why does it matter to you?
Yeah.
If she has if somebody thinks that the job they're doing is worth paying for, and it pays enough for them to pay their bills, especially if you are bitching and moaning about how we don't have enough babies. Babies require money, don't they? Don't you want these people to have a job?
Well, yeah, and
like...
just in that instance too, the same thing that you could do is go back to this woman and say, well, what exactly is it that you do?
What would you
know?
Yeah, but what would you like them to do? Should they be out picking fruit?
But you know, what I don't think, like I said before, we started this, I don't think that this was what she was trying to get after.
Mm.
However, she is on to something. You know, being required to sit in a 9-to-5 job, what if you were able to accomplish what you needed to do in 6 hours for that day? What if you don't need a 5-day work week? What if you can do what you need to do more efficiently in a 4-day work week and have a greater work-life balance? Mm-hmm. And you see all the pushback that you get because there's still this idea that you're not working unless you are visible, unless, you know, this was the pushback that came from everybody teleworking so much. You know, if you're not at your desk doing your job and I can see you as a supervisor, then you're not doing your work. Even to the point of, I remember during the height of the COVID era, not era, but the height of the pandemic, reading an article about companies that were employing certain kinds of software to monitor their employees who were teleworking. And it looked at the number of clicks that they did on their computer, on their terminal. They had to check in so many times, and it actually came up with some kind of level of proficiency, whether or not they were at doing these sorts of things. It was not like, it made you wonder if they turned the camera on to take a look at you to make sure you were at your desk. Yeah. Not unlike 1984 with the telescreen looking back at you. Mm-hmm. That sort of thing.
I feel like they just want to make everybody a slave, basically. I mean, there's a certain class of people who are in charge and making all the decisions, and everybody else is a worker bee. And we're not going to trust you to do your job. And if you can actually get the work done accurately in less time, then we'll just pay you less. And, like, people don't value human beings, I feel like. It's like, that woman was like, what do you do all day? You're just sitting at the computer. Like, it doesn't even occur to her what they might be doing. She doesn't even think about it. She's concerning herself what somebody is doing. If somebody's got a job and they're getting paid, why is it any of your fucking business? It's like...
Yeah. What we don't know is what is her work history? Has she worked in a corporate environment and is making this kind of observation? But from the sounds of it, I doubt that she has. She has no concept of it. So all she has is some sort of theoretical idea. I would push even the idea of theory here. She has some concept of what it must be like. And anybody that knows, anybody that's in any kind of position like that, that is that requires on some kind of intellectual work, right? And there's what I mean by that is that there's manual work. You're working in a factory. You're building plastic toys. You're assembling refrigerators, and I've been in those conditions where you're doing that, and this is a manual input and output kind of thing on a conveyor belt.
How satisfying was that for you, though?
Not very satisfying at all.
And these dumb people think that if you're not doing a job like that you shouldn't enjoy your job. You shouldn't. As long as you're doing, it's kind of the same as those of us who write or create. But then don't think of that as a real job.
Sure, but then also you look at other jobs. What I would say is a corporate job. And I'm not talking about a corporate job like working for Geico where you're working in a call center. That is a corporate job. But I'm talking about something where you are, say, you work in the field of analysis. Your day and your week may be an ebb and flow. It could be very busy from point A or from 8 o'clock in the morning to 5 o'clock at night. You're doing all this sort of work. You've got a full inbox, and you've got meetings interspersed with that. Or it could be that it's a surge. Like in a lot of my work is you have a lot of surge and a lot of things that come around that have to be done right away. And then there are periods where there's not much going on, where you can devote to other things that you're working on. This is the time for creative work. This is the time for analysis. This is this sort of thing, but it depends on the job. So you can't come on TikTok, I'm sorry, and make a blanket assumption, not a very well-educated assumption, an informed assumption as to what somebody does 8 hours a day, 40 days a week, sitting in a white-collar job in a cubicle.
But you and I were talking about it, though, and I said, well, what does it sound like when you have people who say, well, you shouldn't be paid for that. You shouldn't be paid for that job. You should be doing something that's physical, that we can see, and it's obvious that you're doing a job, and it's obvious that you're working, and we'll just assign you a job.
Okay.
Because there's work to be done, and what you're doing isn't obviously a job to me. So I think you should be out doing something else, like picking fruit, or digging a ditch, or building a road, or something like that, even if it's not something you're good at, or that you want to do.
Yeah.
You shouldn't be trusted to make that choice for yourself. And when I was talking about this with you, what did I say? I said, what does this sound like?
It sounds like the state will do its best to give you a job, and it sounds like a communist country.
Indeed, and in fact, I worked and lived in one right after the Soviet Union fell apart, and so that's very familiar to me. And
I came back with the very famous from each according to their abilities, to each according to his needs.
But these folks a lot of the people that are complaining about this, and they're bitching about what people are doing with their time, and why are you getting paid for that? And I don't think it's a good job. I don't understand it. Therefore, it must be worthless. And let's just cut off. Everybody needs to be laid off because they're extra fat. In the business, then you're a step away from somebody saying, well, I'm going to give you a job that I think you should be doing. They're usually the right-wing people saying this, aren't they?
A lot of times. But
these are the ones that are pro-capitalism?
Yeah. But the interesting thing about that is that if you cut the workforce too far and work doesn't get done, right?
Mm-hmm.
There is a decrease in profits, and when there's a decrease in profit, and you're a public company that has shareholders, shareholders are going to want to know why there is a decrease in profit. And next thing you know, if you're a CEO that's made these decisions, you're on your way out. Now, granted, you're on your way out probably with a golden parachute, whereas all the people you laid off got a lead one.
Right.
But still, there is that kind of a dynamic there. You want to cut things so much to the quick. At a certain point, it's going to get into your level of productivity.
But then they're like, well, now we need robots, and we need to send people to other or we need to send jobs to other countries because it's cheaper, and they don't have the laws that we have, and then oh God, this is getting really complicated. But
sure.
But these are the same people who are bitching and moaning about how there's not enough babies, and they don't like government interference. But if you don't have enough money to pay for your housing or your food or to raise your child, then the government usually steps in. And so it doesn't make any sense to me. I think many of these people don't stop and think about the big picture. But I do think that personally, I don't give a shit what you do every day as long as it is legal and not going to victimize anyone. As far as morals go, I guess it depends on. I mean, everybody has their own moral code, I guess. But I don't really care what some corporate person is doing. If somebody thinks that it's a job that needs to be done and is willing to pay for it, then I'm fine with seeing these people tippy tapping, as she put it, at their computers all day. Because it means that they are employed and they're able to pay their bills and they're able to make their own decisions. And why is anybody lamenting this? I don't get it.
Yeah, but the other thing too is that I mean, at the baseline level, anybody that's tippy tapping at their computer at a corporate job doesn't owe her a goddamn explanation as to what.
Well, nobody owes her a fucking explanation. And I'm really in a profane mood today anyway, because everybody, it seems like everybody wants to be confrontational about the most ridiculous things. You run into these folks on social media and you make a comment on something and they want to start a fight with you. And it's a holiday, a beautiful sunny holiday here, but they want to start a fucking fight with you about it. And they don't have the social awareness to know when it's time to just move on.
Yeah.
So you get these people that come on and they want to talk about, well, what are you doing with your time? Well, what difference does it make? What are you doing with yours? You're on TikTok crapping on people because they have jobs that pay enough for them to live on. Why aren't you just happy that they have jobs? Right. I'm talking about fuckers with jobs. That's what George would say. George Carlin, that is. Anyway, this was a very productive exercise. What do you say?
I think so.
Yeah? You make me light up, though. Don't you? I look prettier when I'm with Bill because he makes me smile. And it's a real smile. It's not a forced smile. He's my Bill. What'd you say?
Well, I don't know what to say.
You don't know what to say?
No.
Should we just go to Slovenia?
We can go there anytime, I guess.
Till we get deported.
But we've got Lithuania and Switzerland to go to first.
I want to go to Bosnia.
Yeah.
I think.
And so a colleague of mine today said that he decided that they were going to go to Oman.
Oh wow, that's exotic.
Yeah.
I would like to. I was looking at pictures of Slovenia and noticing how beautiful it was. And we went 9 years ago. And then we went again in 2021, but we went to a different area.
Yeah.
But every time we go to Slovenia, it's so beautiful. And that's where Melania is from. And if I were her, I would want to live there because it's so pretty and whimsical and inspiring. As long as you don't go on ill-advised 10-mile walks to a gorge like we did. But we lived to tell the tale.
We did.
And then I made you call a cab.
Right. And that was a good idea.
Yeah, this is why he keeps me around, because I often have good ideas.
All the time.
And they're not macho men ideas either. They are no, we will be taking a cab back to the hotel.
Yeah, and that was a good idea.
Well, I think we've said as much as we ought to say.
Okay.
I was going to say something else earlier, and it was rather funny what I was going to say, but I've already written about it. And I don't need to rerun it, I don't think. So,
all right.
Thank you for guesting.
Not a problem.
All right, well, ciao, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.